Welcome to the world of fear. This is Tale of Darkness, where every story drags you deeper into the darkness. Stories that will quicken your heartbeat. This happened 2 years ago, but I still can't make complete sense of it. I'm not the kind of person who jumps at shadows or tells ghost stories around a campfire. In fact, I used to make fun of people who did. But after what happened that weekend, I don't laugh at those stories anymore. I just listen quietly. My name is Jordan. At the time I was 28 and working as a freelance designer, mostly doing contract work from home. My girlfriend at the time, Emily, had just landed a new job that gave her a few weeks off before she officially started. We decided to take a short, spontaneous trip, nothing fancy, just a few days away to disconnect and relax. She found this small boutique hotel tucked in the mountains of upstate Vermont. It looked charming, old-fashioned maybe, even a little too quiet, but after reading a few reviews and seeing the photos, we figured it would be perfect. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon just before a snowstorm hit. The sky was already graying over by the time we checked in. The hotel was smaller than I expected, only 3 floors, maybe 12 rooms total, but it had that cozy rustic vibe. Exposed wood beams, oil paintings on the walls, a fireplace crackling in the common room. The receptionist, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and a smoker's voice, handed us the key to room 303. I remember she said it kind of slowly, 303, like she was trying to remember something about it. Then she looked at Emily and smiled. Top floor, corner unit, quietest room in the building. There were no elevators, just a wide wooden staircase with a long hallway on each floor. Everything creaked. The walls, the floorboards, even the air felt old. Our room was at the far end of the 3rd floor hall. The brass room number on the door was slightly tarnished, and the handle turned with a gritty resistance like it hadn't been used in a while. Inside the room was off, not dirty or creepy, just off. The lights flickered a little when we turned them on, and the radiator made a weird clunking sound every few minutes. It had a king bed with a heavy quilt, 2 antiquae-looking armchairs, and a window that overlooked the frozen woods behind the hotel. The wallpaper was faded and peeling slightly at the corners, and one of the paintings on the wall, a landscape of a foggy valley, was hanging slightly crooked like it had been knocked and never fixed. We laughed about it at first. It was quaint. Emily joked that it looked like a room in an Agatha Christie novel. We unpacked, opened a bottle of wine, and settled in for the night. Snow was starting to fall outside, and for a while it was peaceful, romantic even. We watched some old movie on the laptop and went to bed around midnight. That was the first night we heard it. Around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up suddenly, not from a sound exactly, but from a feeling. Like the air in the room had shifted, heavier somehow. Emily was still asleep next to me, breathing slow and deep, completely out. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft but steady, 1 set, then 2. Slow, deliberate pacing, like someone walking back and forth just outside our door. I sat up and listened. The footsteps stopped. I got up quietly and peeked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. No one, not even the shadow of someone moving away. I told myself it was just another guest, maybe someone from the room next door. But as I climbed back into bed, I noticed something strange. The radiator had stopped clunking. The lights on the nightstand and had dimmed slightly, even though the bulbs were new, and the entire room was colder. When we woke up the next morning, Emily complained of a headache. She said she'd had a weird dream, something about someone standing at the foot of our bed, just staring. She couldn't remember the details, only that she felt watched. I told her about the footsteps, and we both kind of laughed it off. Maybe the altitude was getting to us. Maybe it was just the old building playing tricks. We decided to get some air and drove into the nearby town to grab breakfast and explore. But when we got back later that evening, something felt different. Subtle things. The painting on the wall was now straight. The two armchairs had been moved slightly angled inward, like someone had been sitting in them talking. The bathroom faucet, it had a slow drip we didn't remember. We asked the receptionist if housekeeping had come through, but she looked confused and told us no one had entered the room. "We only clean on checkout," she said. "That night it escalated. It was about 3:00 a.m. when Emily shook me awake. Her eyes were wide, terrified. 'Jordan,' she whispered, 'someone's in the room.' I didn't even ask. I just sat up and listened. There were breaths, not ours. Shallow, raspy breaths coming from the corner near the window. I couldn't see anyone, but the sound was undeniable. And then just for a second I saw the curtain sway. Not like it was moved by the radiator, but as if someone had brushed past it. I jumped out of bed and flipped on every light in the room. Nothing. No one. I opened the closet, the bathroom door, even checked under the bed. Empty, but the air, it felt like it was vibrating, like a low hum that sat just under the edge of hearing. Emily was shaking. She wanted to leave right then, but I convinced her to wait until morning. The storm outside had turned violent snow, piling up over the windowsill, wind howling through the cracks in the frame. It wasn't safe to drive. We left the lights on and huddled under the covers, wide awake. At some point we must have dozed off, because when we opened our eyes again it was morning. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not quite rotten, but metallic, like blood or rust. Emily was staring at the ceiling. There were handprints, faint dark smudges on the white plaster, too high for either of us to have made them. They stretched across the ceiling like someone had been crawling suspended. That was when we decided to check out. But that's when we realized we couldn't. When I say we couldn't check out, I don't mean someone physically stopped us. There was no confrontation, no receptionist telling us to stay. I mean, we couldn't leave. We packed our bags in under 10 minutes, moving quickly and barely speaking. The air in the room felt thinner somehow, like there wasn't quite enough oxygen. Emily kept glancing at the ceiling at those smeared handprints. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her phone twice trying to text her sister. We bolted out the door and hurried down the stairs, but when we reached the front desk there was no one there. No receptionist. No guests, no sound. It was like walking into a painting of the hotel rather than the hotel itself. Everything was still, like time had frozen. The fire in the lobby hearth was no longer crackling, just embers unmoving. Even the grandfather clock by the elevator shaft had stopped. 6:44 a.m. Its hands said. We both checked our phones. Same time. No signal. I rang the service bell 3 times. The sound echoed too loudly in the silence. No one came. That's when Emily pointed out something I'd missed. There was no exit. The front entrance, the same one we'd walked through the day we arrived, was now just a wall. There was no door, no window. Just an old wooden coat rack where the glass double doors used to be. I swear I nearly fainted. We ran to the back to where we remembered the side exit by the kitchen. Same thing. A dead end, bricked over. No signs of construction or recent changes, just a solid, unbroken wall. It made no sense. None. I went to the window in the common area and tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. Emily grabbed one of the fireplace tools and smashed it against the glass. Nothing, not even a crack. It was like hitting stone. Then she turned and looked at me with this strange expression, a mix of terror and confusion and something else. Recognition. What if we're not dreaming? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. We tried every hallway, every door. but every path we took eventually twisted back around to the third floor, always back to room 303. Even when we took the stairs down to the second floor, we descend for minutes. I counted 47 steps at one point, only to arrive back at the third floor landing. It wasn't just the building. It was us. Somehow we were being pulled back again and again like gravity with no center. By mid-afternoon, we gave up trying to leave. We sat in the lobby, silently staring at the fire that no longer moved. The world outside the windows looked real but distant, like a movie playing on a screen. Emily began to cry, and then she started talking to the room. Not me. The room. "I know you're here," she said softly. "I don't know what you want." Her voice cracked, and I saw something flicker in the reflection of the blackened television screen. A face. Just for a second, pale, sunken, watching. That night was the worst. We returned to the room, not because we wanted to, but because it was the only place we could go. We tried to sleep in shifts. I stayed up first reading old magazines I found in the nightstand and drawer. They were all from 1997. All of them, no newer ones. Each issue had the same mailing label on the front. James H., Loring Room 303. Emily started mumbling in her sleep. At first I thought it was just normal dreaming, but then it grew louder and clearer. "I never left, I never left, I never left," over and over. When I shook her awake, she stared at me like I was a stranger, like she didn't recognize me. "You're not real," she said, her voice flat. "He's just wearing your face." Then she screamed, and when I say screamed, I mean it was this primal high-pitched wail that sent chills through my entire body. She backed away from me like I was something inhuman. I tried to calm her, to get her to focus, but it was like she wasn't there anymore, like something else was moving behind her eyes. She ran into the bathroom and locked the door. I banged on it, begged her to open up, but all I could hear was sobbing and whispering from inside. I fell asleep sitting up against the door. When I woke up, the door was open and Emily was back in bed. She was facing the wall, completely still. I touched her shoulder gently. She was ice cold, not dead. Just cold. She didn't respond to anything I said. I spent hours trying. I screamed, I cried, I shook her, but it was like her body was there and her mind had gone somewhere else. That morning something had changed again. When I looked out the window, I saw that the forest outside was gone. In its place was a long hallway mirroring the one inside the hotel. It extended endlessly in both directions, lit by swinging ceiling lamps. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes, blinking hard, trying to process what I was seeing. And then I saw someone walking in it. Far away, barely a silhouette, but walking, back and forth, pacing, just like I had heard that first night. That's when I knew this place wasn't a hotel anymore. Maybe it never was. It was a trap. A box designed to feel familiar, cozy, safe. But once you stepped inside, it began to erode your sense of time, your memory, yourself. And then it consumed you. That night I decided I was going to break the rules. Not the hotel's rules, reality's rules. I took the heavy oak dresser from against the wall and shoved it under the door handle to keep anything out. Then I opened the bathroom mirror, removed the small metal hinge from the inside with the screwdriver on my keychain, and began carving something into the floor. It was simple, "Don't stay," 3 words. I carved it deep, because somehow I knew others would come. Maybe others had come, and if anyone made it to this room, they needed to know it was already too late. And then something even worse happened. Emily spoke again, but this time her voice wasn't hers. At first I thought I was dreaming again. That kind of half-asleep delirium where the world feels heavy and your thoughts aren't quite your own. But I was fully awake, sitting in the armchair across the room, watching Emily's body slowly rise and fall beneath the covers. She'd been unresponsive for hours, barely blinking, but then she turned her head slowly, mechanically, and looked directly at me. Her pupils were huge, swallowing the color of her eyes, and her lips moved, but it wasn't Emily's voice that came out. It was low, male, raspy but clear. You shouldn't have tried to leave. I froze. It wasn't just the voice that terrified me. It was the calmness, the assuredness of it. Whoever, whatever was speaking through her wasn't angry. It wasn't trying to scare me. It sounded almost disappointed. I stood up slowly, backing toward the door. The dresser was still wedged under the handle, but I didn't care. I just needed distance. Emily's body sat up. It wasn't a smooth motion. It looked forced, like invisible strings were jerking her upright. Her neck cocked sideways, and the voice came again. "This place belongs to the forgotten, and now you are part of it." I don't remember grabbing the lamp. I just remember swinging it wildly, as if it would fix any of this. The shade flew off the bulb, shattered against the floor, and the base cracked against the wall. Emily's head tilted back, not in pain, not even in surprise, just mechanically, like a puppet being pulled too far. Then her body collapsed back onto the bed. I rushed over to her, calling her name again and again. This time she blinked, and the real Emily was back. She was trembling. Her skin was ice cold again, and tears were already spilling down her cheeks before she could say a word. I saw them, she whispered. Who? She shook her head, violently hugging herself. Not people, not really, not anymore, just shapes, like they used to be human, but the hotel took all the details away, like they were erased. She told me she'd been awake the whole time, trapped inside her body, watching, listening. She could see her own hands moving, feel herself speaking words she didn't mean. And worst of all, she felt something else inside her, watching her from the inside out. I wanted to tell her it was over, that we were safe now, but I knew better, because while she was talking, the room began to hum. A deep, low vibration, not a sound exactly, more like a pressure behind the ears, building slowly, steadily, like a migraine made of sound. The light above us flickered and dimmed. The walls felt like they were breathing. And then came the knocking, not at the door, from inside the walls. It started behind the headboard. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence, then again, but from the opposite wall near the closet, then under the floorboards, then above. They were moving, surrounding us. I grabbed Emily's hand, and we bolted from the room, not caring where we ended up. The hallway outside was longer than I remembered, much longer, endless. We ran past room after room, but the numbers weren't sequential anymore. 308, 312, 299, 322. Some were scratched out entirely. Others had 2 numbers, one cleanly printed, and one carved below it by hand like a warning. Eventually we stopped running. The hallway had turned into something else, wider, darker, lined with doors that didn't belong in a hotel. Some were made of rusted iron. Others were old wooden barn doors. One looked like the hatch of a submarine. I swear one of them was just a curtain of black velvet. And the hum was louder now, almost deafening. There were no windows, no stairs, just this warped hallway with impossible architecture, and a smell that reminded me of damp earth and rotting paper. Emily pointed to a door ahead, a plain wide one with a small metal plaque. It read office, the only normal door we'd seen in hours. We pushed it open. Inside was an old-fashioned office straight out of the 1960s. Green desk lamp, typewriter, brown leather chair. It was immaculate, no dust, no damage. A single manila folder sat on the desk labeled Room 303. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photos. The first was of Emily and me taken from outside our hotel window. From the second night, we were inside the room, both of us asleep, but the photo had been taken from outside, and our window, as far as we knew, didn't open. The next photo was worse. It showed two bodies lying in bed, blood-soaked, motionless. At first I thought they were strangers, but when I looked closer I realized it was us, our faces, our clothes, that same room, but we were dead, and the timestamp on the bottom, July 15/2, 44 a.m., the same time I had first heard the knocking, the same time the hotel clock had stopped. I dropped the folder. I couldn't breathe. Emily stumbled back, knocking over the desk lamp. The bulb shattered, and the room went black, and then we heard footsteps, approaching slow and deliberate just outside the office door. We didn't wait. We grabbed the folder and ran back into the hallway, but now it had changed again. This time the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the lights above us were swinging as if caught in a storm. No wind, just motion. At the end of the hallway was another door, a familiar one, room 303, only now the number had been scratched away, replaced with something carved directly into the wood. Stay, I looked at Emily. She looked at me. We didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. We opened the door and stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind us. Room 303 looked the same, but it wasn't. The furniture was rearranged. The bed was in the center now, and there were no lamps, no TV, no bathroom door, just a gaping black hole where it used to be. A constant low moaning sound echoed from inside that opening. The wallpaper had peeled off in jagged strips, exposing a damp, pulsing surface underneath like skin. Emily walked forward slowly as if in a trance. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I strained my ears. There was a whisper, a voice buried under the hum and groaning walls. It was my voice. I could hear myself saying things I had never said in tones I didn't recognize, panicked, desperate. Begging, screaming, then it shifted. I heard Emily's voice too, weeping, calling for help, but it wasn't us, not now. These were echoes from somewhere else, or maybe from some time else. I turned back to the door, gone. Just a wall, no knob, no seams. We were trapped. Suddenly the bed began to shake. The mattress twisted in unnatural ways, bending at odd angles like something was writhing beneath it. Then, with a sickening crack, the mattress split, revealing a hollow space beneath. From it a figure began to rise. It was us, dead. Our corpses stitched together crudely at the limbs, faces, pale, and mouths wide open in a soundless scream. Their eyes were missing, scooped out, but they moved with purpose, twitching and jerking as they crawled out of the bed's cavity. Emily screamed and stumbled back, her foot catching on the torn carpet. I grabbed her and yanked her toward the far wall, which now had a new door, no knob again, just a faded staff-only sign. I shoved it with my shoulder, and it gave way. We fell through into another hallway, but it wasn't a hallway this time. It was the lobby, only it was empty. No furniture, no front desk. Just massive ceilings, crumbling pillars, and hundreds of suitcases piled along the walls, dusty, abandoned. Emily picked one up and opened it. Inside were children's clothes, dolls, a photo album, a set of keys. She opened another, books, expired medicine, a bloody pair of glasses. We didn't recognize any names or tags, but all the luggage looked lived in, like it had been packed in a hurry. Some had boarding passes or maps sticking out of pockets. All of it told the same story. People had come here and never left. And then we heard the elevator. Ding. It opened by itself. The lobby lights flickered violently, and the air got heavy again, like it was thick with static. Emily stepped back. "I'm not going in there," she said, trembling. The elevator was dark inside. Only the faint red glow of the buttons was visible. Then we heard another ding. Another elevator on the other side of the lobby. It opened too, then another and another. All of them opening in sync, all empty, and then, not empty, figures stepped out, not walking, not floating, just appearing. They were shaped like people, but wrong, translucent, warped, moving in stuttered, flickering frames like broken film reels. They twitched as they moved toward us, their faces a blur of smeared features. Some wore bellhop uniforms. Others looked like guests. But they all shared one thing in common. They were decayed, partially erased, and they were watching us. Emily grabbed my arm. We backed up slowly, but the figures didn't rush us. They just closed in, surrounding us, until we were in a circle with no way out. And then they spoke, not in words, not aloud. They flooded our minds. Thousands of overlapping voices surged into our thoughts, screaming, pleading, whispering. They spoke of time, loops of fading, of becoming part of the hotel. They told us we had stayed too long. That by entering room 303 we had crossed the threshold. This place wasn't a hotel. It was a collection, a prison for memories that had been forgotten by the world. It fed on people who were isolated, transient, overlooked. The lonely, the broken, the wandering, it lured them in, offered comfort, then consumed them, slowly erasing them from the outside world. Room 303 was the gateway. We had opened it. We were now inside its ecosystem, a ghost story in progress. Not dead, not alive, just paused, held in place, waiting to be forgotten. Emily clutched her head, screaming as the flood of thoughts became unbearable. I tried to shut it out, tried to scream back, anything to push the noise out of my skull. And then silence. The lobby was gone. The figures vanished. Emily was gone. I was standing alone. Back in room 303. Just me, the suitcase, the humming walls. I called for her. Searched every corner of the room. Nothing, and then the bathroom door opened, but there hadn't been a bathroom door since we returned. From inside a voice called out, Emily's voice, "Please, come help me," but it wasn't her. The tone was off. Robotic, too clean, like it had been recorded and played back. I stepped closer. The bathroom was pitch black. A single drop of blood fell across the threshold, then another, then a slow, wet, dragging sound. I knew whatever was inside it had taken her voice. I turned away. I ran toward the window and tore at the curtains, but it was bricked over, no glass, no escape. I pounded the wall, screamed until my throat was raw, but there was nothing. Only that hum pulsing through the drywall, vibrating in my teeth. And then the TV turned on. We hadn't touched it. It flickered with static for a few seconds, then showed us, Emily and me, sitting on the edge of the bed, talking, laughing. The first night we arrived, I watched myself lean over and kiss her forehead. Then the screen flickered again. We were asleep, then flickered. We were fighting, screaming at each other. Emily was crying, then flickered. We were both pale, stiff, unmoving. Then the tape rewound, played again and again. A loop, our loop, room 303 had recorded us, trapped us, and now it was replaying us. We were part of its story now, and no one on the outside would ever know. The television flickered again, the grainy images looping endlessly like a broken nightmare. I stared into the glowing screen, my heart pounding the line between reality and nightmare, blurring, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The room itself seemed to contract and expand, breathing alive. The hum was no longer background noise. It was a voice, a pulse, a heartbeat. I had to get out. But how? The door was a wall. The window bricked shut. The bathroom held only darkness and a voice that wasn't Emily's. My limbs felt heavier, as if the hotel itself was anchoring me here, a spider wrapping me in its web. Then the suitcase. It sat quietly by the bed, dust covered and ominous. I moved toward it, hesitating. The lock clicked open with a simple push, as if it had been waiting for me to choose. Inside I found a notebook, a journal, its pages yellowed, filled with hurried, desperate handwriting. It was the story of the hotel, written by someone trapped here before me. Each page described the same cycle. People come, they stay, they disappear, only to be trapped in the hotel's endless loop, their memories erased, their voices consumed by the walls. The writer's last entry was a warning: do not trust the hotel. It will promise escape, but will only deepen your prison. The only way to break free is to confront what you fear the most yourself. But beware. The hotel feeds on fear, and it is patient. I closed the journal, heart racing. Confront myself. How suddenly the room shifted again. The walls peeled back like paper, revealing a void black infinite. Emily's voice echoed softly, no longer robotic, but raw and human. Find me. I stepped into the void. Time lost meaning. Memories flooded me, moments of happiness, pain, regret. The hotel was pulling them from me piece by piece. Each memory a thread, and the hotel was weaving them into its tapestry. In the center of the void I saw her, Emily. Her eyes hollow, but her voice was a beacon. Help me. I reached out. As our fingers touched, the void shattered. We were back in the lobby, but it was different. Light poured through broken windows. The walls were intact. The suitcases were gone. The hotel was silent. We were free. But as we stepped outside, I glanced back. Room 303 was gone, replaced by an empty lot. A chill ran down my spine. The hotel hadn't disappeared. It was waiting for the next visitors, and we were its latest ghosts.